Democrats, defenders of abortion rights, of women and pregnant people's bodily autonomy and freedom, their ability to be equally protected by the laws, they must understand there is a reason Republicans are not talking about their extreme radical position, because they know it is unpopular. That means that Democrats should talk about their position, because in two-party politics, zero-sum terms, their position is popular. As Rebecca Traister writes for New York Magazine, quote, "The compelling claim on the hearts and minds of voters who want more justice and more equality has been sitting right there for Democrats this whole time. And unlike the right-wing stories, this narrative has the benefit of being true. Our right to abortion is fundamental to human and familial flourishing, to dignity and economic security, to health and love and happiness and thriving." Rebecca Traister is a writer at large for New York Magazine, someone who's written extensively over the years about reproductive rights, including one prescient piece from 2019 titled "Our Fury Over Abortion Was Dismissed for Decades as Hysterical." Her most recent piece argues Democrats are not pushing back hard enough on the conservative rollback of abortion rights, and she's someone whose voice is incredibly important, especially this moment. It is great to have her here. Rebecca, what is striking to me about this moment, a moment that you have chronicled our plunge towards for years in your journalism, is that unlike, if you look at gay marriage equality, right? Like, public opinion really changed. There was a whole bunch of fights in the courts. There was a bunch of fights in the state legislatures, the brutal political conflict we see. But public opinion changed. Like, people changed their mind. Mass public opinion changed. Public opinion has not changed here. It's been very, very steady. And yet here we are. How do you understand that?
Well, it's fascinating because there's been a refusal to accept where public opinion is. There was actually a shift in polling on abortion. For a long time, you got these polls that said the United States is divided 50-50 on abortion. And then we got better polling approaches to how you ask questions about this. And when you started to ask two different questions, one, how do you personally feel about abortion? You got the 50-50. And then, do you want abortion to be illegal? You got to these numbers that were like 70% of Americans, even in purple and red states, want abortion to remain legal. And that has been consistent. But it's like the party, the Democratic Party, could not hear, was resistant to this knowledge of how popular this was, and has shied away from it. You know, you're pointing out the fact that Republicans have paid attention. They know their position is the unpopular one. Democratic leadership over my lifetime has not behaved as though they were on the popular and winning side of this. They have not embraced the call to defend abortion rights full-throatedly. They have refused to have the fights directly about Supreme Court nominees. You know, even today, the day after the leak, you had Democratic leadership in Texas supporting Henry Cuellar, the incumbent, who is an anti-abortion Democrat. You have not had a party that has stood solidly, passionately, and with moral fortitude behind the defense of abortion rights. And that is part of the story of how we got here.
There's also the fact that and this is something you've been writing about and chronicling as well, is that, like, again, it's not going to stop here. I mean, again, people that pay attention to this know this, but I just want to be clear. Like, here's Kevin Cramer today. And again, I think this is an important message for people to hear, particularly people who are like, well, I live in a blue state and abortion's protected here. Like, this is Kevin Cramer today. Again, sort of saying the quiet part loud. He mentioned someone crossing North Dakota state lines to get an abortion. I don't find a lot of solace in that just because it didn't happen in my state. So yeah, I think you could expect that pro-life activists would push for federal protections. Like, yes, you can. Like, it seems to me that everyone should be clear-eyed and take these people at their word about where this will go.
Right, and I think that's another real failure on the part of a Democratic Party that has treated this, honestly, as though it wasn't a reality, right? People who have been screaming about the loss of Roe, the potential overturn of Roe, or just the gutting of Roe, which of course remains a possibility, that it will stand as an empty shell, have been told that they're hysterical and overdramatic for years, right? But part of what that does, in addition to having not had the fight you were supposed to have in order to defend this, is to leave us profoundly unprepared for what's about to happen. Right? There has not, coming from a partisan standpoint, Democrats have left their people undefended in all kinds of ways, including with a very warped perception that, don't worry, A, this probably isn't going to happen. B, if it happens, you'll be fine if you're in a blue state, when in fact there are all kinds of perils and just wildly changed circumstances that are about to come into play as soon as this Supreme Court decision comes down. I believe no matter how it comes down, whether it's the full overturn or whether it's an all but overturn gutting.
Yeah, we should be clear here that we don't know the outcome, and there's no way that what will happen out of Dobbs will be the expansion of abortion rights. They will either be cut back considerably and dramatically or entirely annihilated. Those are the two options. You know, those were two options before we knew this draft leaked. That was always going to be the two options, but very clearly those are the two options.
Right. And I also want to point something out about what is actually at stake, like, every day. One of my first reactions 2 nights ago when this news broke, and I was actually watching your show as it was happening, and I was confused, right? Is this real? What is this leak? I don't know. Does this mean this is going to be the decision? I was very confused. And what my concern was, oh my gosh, this country is full of patients who have appointments for tomorrow and Friday and next week. And if I'm confused about what this means, there needs to be a message sent to those patients who need care. And the care is still legal, because the one thing I did know was this was not an official decision. So where was leadership? What needs to happen from Democrats, who are the stewards of these rights, right, is in this moment, there needs to be a focusing and centering on the millions of people who need care, who are about to face criminalization, being cut off from access. There needs to be direct messaging to them about the fact that they can still go to keep those appointments in coming weeks, that this is not official. There needs to be, this is not about political brinksmanship right now, which I think is what so much of the media and coverage and even some of the Democratic talking points have been about. There's actually, one of the things that has to happen is we have to center the people who are at stake and whose lives are going to be profoundly affected by this.
Yes, and to that point, it's hard to do that if you won't say the word abortion, for instance, right? So if you want to say, like, we want to make sure that women that need abortions, that's the word, if they need abortions, can access abortions because abortions are legal and your right to obtain. And we want to make sure that you know if you have, like, again, even just saying the word a bunch, like, they don't want to do that. And so then you end up in this situation.
And it's been 50 years, and when Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, the night this draft leaked, put out their message, their statement, it did not include the word abortion. They couldn't say it. It's something that activists have been after Joe Biden about. He didn't even use the word abortion in his State of the Union address. He has used it in the past couple of days, sort of unwillingly. Right. But again, they're not treating this as a moral and actual medical emergency for millions of people and their families.
Rebecca Traister, great to have you on. Thank you very much.